Excellent. You know, I'm really glad they have these things because if I had to use my phone to time that, I'm pretty confident that I would botch it up. Each year at the Ethical Society, we organize our programs around the theme. Our theme this year is Exploring the Human Condition, and we have many fascinating and diverse platforms scheduled for you this fall. Today's presentation will continue the discussion that began earlier today during Forum. Only now, the focus will shift our attention from green burial to the rich history of the beautiful Bellefontaine Cemetery and Arboretum. Quite frankly, to consider it as just a cemetery would be quite an understatement. Our speaker, Richard Lay, he has some local roots via Cleveland High School here in South St. Louis, followed by attendance at Oklahoma Baptist University. Since February of 2008, he has been the Vice President of Community and Customer Relations. He's both a licensed funeral director and an ordained minister. We are about to be the beneficiary of his passion and knowledge about Bellefontaine Cemetery's history and the story of its families. He's an active member and past president of the Cemetery Management Association and currently the Vice President of the Associated Cemeteries of Missouri. He was invited here today as a shared venture between Climate Action Now team and our platform speakers team. Please join me in welcoming Richard Lay.
And good morning. And good morning again to some folks who I met earlier. I must begin by apologizing for my appearance. This is not a pre-Halloween thing going on to kind of set you in the Halloween spirit. It's actually a result of some oral surgery that I had on Tuesday, and so I'm sure there's at least one dentist in the house who, well, anyway. But I'm here to talk about a passion that goes back to 1860 for my family. That was when our first burial was in Bellefontaine Cemetery. By the way, it's Bellefontaine Cemetery. I always make a point of saying that initially because I contend that too many Germans moved to St. Louis and they did not have an appreciation or even like or understand the French language. And so the wonderful, beautiful French word of Bellefontaine became Bellefontaine, and it stuck. So I apologize for mispronouncing the name, but that's what I will do. So, as I said, my family's first burial was there in 1860. My mother says I was there before I was born. I have to take her word for it. But that she attended a funeral and was great with child, and it happened to be me. But Bellefontaine has a rich history, and we're going to touch on that today. And maybe talk about a few folks too. We'll just see how the time goes. Bellefontaine goes back a long way. It actually, the process of establishing a rural cemetery began with Père Lachaise in Paris in the turn of the century at the early 1800s. And Père Lachaise was established to move the cemeteries out of downtown Paris and put them in a rural area, because they'd had some issues. Many of the cemeteries were stacked, where they would just bury a person, come in with more dirt, bury another person, and they'd be 12 bodies deep. And when you do that next to a church building, well, things can happen. And one cemetery collapsed into the basement of the church. And there were other issues that were happening, and then the plagues were a problem as well. And so there was a feeling of getting the cemeteries away from people. And so the rural cemetery movement began. And it began there in Père Lachaise. It migrated to the United States in Boston with the building of the Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Mount Auburn was constructed in 1831. In 1841, a group of businessmen in St. Louis started looking for some land to do the same thing here. My contention was, in part, they wanted some of that to reclaim land that was in the city, I mean downtown, that had been used as a churchyard, used as a church cemetery. Christ Church Cathedral had a cemetery. It doesn't have one any longer. The Wesleyan Church, the Methodist Church, the city had a cemetery that it operated. So there were all of these properties that were rather interesting to some of these businessmen in St. Louis, and they wanted to utilize that property to continue to grow the business prospects in St. Louis. So they started looking for a place for a rural cemetery, and they bought the Hempstead family farm, 4 parcels of it. We also bought a parcel of land from Kennett, who was at one time the mayor, and we bought some land from John O'Fallon to add up to our 314 acres. The Archdiocese thought we had a good idea, and several years later, they came along and purchased some property for Calvary Cemetery, which is next door to us. But we were there first. So, this group of businessmen started shopping for land in 1841. By 1849, they purchased the first section of property, first 128 acres, and over the next 10 to 15 years, they added to it to complete the entire property that we have now. In 1849, we were chartered and established by the state of Missouri as a cemetery association. Our cemetery has never been owned by an individual. It's never been owned by a group. It's always been a cemetery association operated by a board of trustees that are elected. So we have always been, as we are right now, operated by a group of folks. Now we have included business women over the years, and a variety of folks, but many have a connection to the cemetery, and we actually have descendants of our original trustees from 1849 that are on our trustee board, which is quite remarkable. In 1850, these trustees voted to set aside 15% of everything that was sold and put it in an endowment and not touch it to prepare and have funds for the future. They've been successful. My mother told me as a youngster there was no money like old money, and we've got some of the oldest money in St. Louis at Bellefontaine Cemetery. Actually, I'm honored to be able to share with you that our trustee informed us at our last board meeting that we have $130 million invested now in that, which in the cemetery world is unheard of anywhere in the country. And we just are so privileged in St. Louis to have an institution like that that has protected those who've gone on before and has invested in the future. And that's been a long part of what Bellefontaine is about. And we're honored to be able to do that. We're also honored not only to be a world-class cemetery and recognized across the country and around the world, but we're a level 3 arboretum. And that happened this past year, that the Morton Society awarded us a level 3. That's because of the number of trees and the species and our old growth and just the care that is given to the property. A level 3 arboretum is remarkable. We're one of 44 in the entire world, right here in St. Louis. 44, that's all, whole world. We're the only level 3 in the state of Missouri, and we're just honored and privileged to be at that level. So the cemetery has a rich history of being cutting edge, of being encouraging and supportive of families, and doing the best we can to provide a wonderful place to remember those who've gone before us. And we're well into multiple generations of that now at Bellefontaine, and it's very exciting. So we continue to do that. We continue to progress. We continue to grow. We continue to keep our basic mission as being a premier cemetery that cares for loved ones and family members in St. Louis and beyond. And then I was so honored earlier to be able to share about green burial, which is not new for us. We've been doing green burial since 1850. Never stopped. During the cholera epidemic, a person was wrapped with a sheet and put in the ground. We don't have a casket requirement and all that wonderful stuff. So I'm going to talk about a few of the folks that are buried there, and some of them you'll know, and maybe some of them you won't know. So we're going to start off with one that most everybody knows, our most visited grave in the cemetery, William Clark. He and his co-explorer, Meriwether Lewis, were asked by Thomas Jefferson to discover a water passage to the Pacific from the Louisiana Purchase. They worked well together because Clark was a seasoned soldier and knew how to command and was a proven leader. And he had skills at handling the boats and finding the paths, and it was just remarkable. The voyage of discovery started in 1804, and they actually made it home in 1806. And they had all their luggage. It's remarkable. It's incredible. I mean, when you think about it, that period of time to leave St. Louis and go to the West Coast and back, I mean, sometimes you can't do that with an airline, it takes it's terribly long. But anyway, they had a wonderful trip. When Clark returned, he was appointed the Indian agent for the tribes west of the Mississippi. Now, what they didn't understand, what the president didn't understand, I think, was that the expedition had changed Clark's feeling about the Indians. It changed his attitude. He and Lewis had started out as fighting the Indians as they headed west, but they realized they wouldn't have survived without Indian assistance during more than those 2 years of that expedition. And because of that, because Clark cared for the Indians and cared about the Indians, he was able to negotiate treaties. But I believe he regretted much of that because he was doing that for his country and was mandated to do that as the Secretary of Indian Affairs to negotiate treaties. But it ended up collecting 419 million acres of land, more land for the United States from the Indians and their territory. The Indians still loved him and referred to him as their red-headed chief. In 2004, we had a dedication at the anniversary of the expedition, and we had 3 tribes represented there, and it was wonderful to be able to have them being part of that celebration, even though they had lost their land. Sure, we're on track. So, Stephen Hempstead owned the land, a part of the land that we bought. It was his family farm, and actually they had a parcel of land on the cemetery property that was their cemetery. Burials date back to 1814. So our first burials on the land predate the cemetery by a considerable amount. And two of those on the Hempstead lot were in the Revolutionary War. So that's pretty exciting too. We have every American war represented by a veteran in the Bellefontaine Cemetery, which is remarkable. We have 10 Medal of Honor recipients, which is more than Jefferson Barracks does. So we're honored in that regard as well. The Hempstead family also built a home on Lucas Place, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But Mary Hempstead married a Spanish fur trader named Manuel Lisa, who actually outfitted Lewis and Clark for their trip out west. Henry Shreve, yeah, there he is. Henry Shreve had an understanding of river traffic better than most. He designed riverboats that traveled up down the Mississippi in record time, and that's because he did a flat haul, as opposed to the boats by Fulton, by Robert Fulton. His steamboat dug into the water, and so the flat-bottom boat was extremely successful at moving down the river. And he not only came up with a flatboat, but he came up with a trawler that would help clear the river, and he actually cleared the Red River down south, and he used what they called a tooth puller that would get the big trees and huge branches out of the water so it was could navigate. And as a result of him opening up those rivers in the south, the folks in Shreveport named their town after him. So Shreveport is not named for a guy who's buried there. His statue is down there, but his burial is at Bellefontaine. Dr. Beaumont was rather remarkable as well. He was acclaimed as the first great American medical researcher. And his experiment with human digestion was just remarkable. A gentleman in 1822, a fur trader named Alex St. Martin, was shot accidentally in the stomach, and rather than healing as it should, it formed a fistula, an opening that Dr. Beaumont could do experiments with, and he chased that poor man all around to do all these experiments, and they were kind of strange. So he would take food and he put it on a little silk piece of thread, and he'd drop it down into this guy's stomach to see what would happen. And he experimented and studied the gastrointestinal system. And Alex St. Martin, he got him to do a contract. And he said, I'll feed you and take care of you, and you can live with my family as long as I can do these experiments. And St. Martin didn't like that idea at all, but he thought, free food and board, I guess I'll do it. And he did it for a while, and he just kind of got tired of the doctor coming up with crazy experiments. Like he shot a gun off and then stuck his hand down there and looking down, see what happened when he got scared, see if it messed up his stomach. It was just a lot of crazy experiments. But he kept this going for 10 years. He chased that man around until 1833, when he finally published his first thing on his first book on the experiments and observation of gastric juices and digestion. So anyway, so eventually Dr. Beaumont passed away, and I think Alex St. Martin was relieved because he didn't have any more experiments to his stomach. And then he turned around and outlived Dr. Beaumont by 27 years. Isn't that amazing? So Beaumont influences textbooks today in the medical field, and we've got a Beaumont High School, we've got We've got Beaumont Street. We had the Beaumont Medical Building, and then Beaumont, Texas, is named for him. And there's another hospital in Mackinac Island that's named for him. And so Dr. Beaumont was way ahead of his time, but it was really because of that French fur trader who got shot in the stomach. So another one of our notables, John O'Fallon, is actually a very shrewd businessman, and he got that because of his uncle. His uncle was William Clark. So John O'Fallon, and all things O'Fallon are named for him. O'Fallon, Illinois, O'Fallon, Missouri. He had trains that went to both. He had so many things that he did. O'Fallon Polytechnical Institute. He was quite the philanthropist. He built the first medical school for Washington University. He took his uncle's land and invested the profits of the real estate in banking and railroad and other things. He was a longtime director of the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and he was the president of a couple other railroads. He was just incredible. He's got a 50-foot granite monument crowned with a female holding a cross and anchor, symbols of hope. And that was designed by George Barnett, and that's at the O'Fallon gravesite. John Brown, everybody thought he was buried at Bellefontaine, but he's not. He has a family lot there, and there is a John C. Brown buried there, but we discovered it wasn't him. Well, the Surveying Society decided they were going to go ahead and honor him anyway because they were going to do it at his grave, they thought they had his grave. He's actually not there. But they went ahead and did this incredible monument to his surveying skills. He surveyed most of the Louisiana Territory. That's a lot of land. He did the initial point in 1815 of the 5th principal meridian. He went on to do the first plat of the city of St. Louis, 1815 to 1818. The starting point was the home of Auguste Chouteau. He did Indiana's territory line in 1823. He surveyed the Kansas River and the Missouri River. He surveyed the Missouri-Arkansas line. In 1825, he did a survey of the Santa Fe Trail. He just went on and on doing all these remarkable surveys. He's not buried here, but it was quite a celebration on the part of the surveyors. They had some reenactors and had a wonderful day celebrating this. And you know, when you think about it, this guy surveyed all that territory with a horse. I mean, and often had to run chains and lines to sort it all out. And the surveys still stand even today. Robert Campbell, man of considerable wealth, had his first success in the fur trade. He retired from that and got into real estate, became the president of the First Bank of Missouri, and he owned the Southern Hotel. Kept his hand in the fur trade, outfitting and financing different fur traders. His wealth allowed him to buy a mansion on Lucas Place, one of the city's first neighborhoods of fine houses. His site of a lot of social events. They actually entertained President Ulysses S. Grant and his wife on several occasions. The house survived because he had two sons who wouldn't let it go. And not only did those two sons not let the house be sold or torn down, they kept all of their mother's stuff. They highly regarded her. So very shortly, they'll be getting ready for Christmas, and if you go down to the Campbell House Museum, which is still, it's at 15th and Locust, it's not Lucas Place anymore, it's Locust, and you'll see some of Virginia Kyle Campbell's decorations. I mean, they saved her decorations in the attic. So many of the items in this museum house are in its original place. It's original stuff, which doesn't happen in most museum homes. And it's really, truly amazing what they can do. Robert Campbell just was a remarkable man who did many wonderful things for the city. And his sons did as well. And the Campbell House is up there. And if you haven't been to it, oh my, you should make a visit. It's really, really wonderful. And the trustees come out once a year, generally in October, and they bring the last of the roses from the rose garden that his wife planted in the 1800s, mind you. And they bring the last roses and they bring them to Robert's grave, which is extremely thoughtful. So Thomas Hart Benton is at Bellefontaine as well. He was the state's first senator. And he was just an incredible guy. He was way ahead of his time. And he supported the westward expansion of the country where many were against it. He wanted to provide ownership of land for those who had settled the land in 1869. And he wanted to see the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. He didn't see the end of those things because he died before that happened, but he was a tremendous, tremendous supporter of St. Louis and of Missouri, and a great leader and a great statesman. His monument is made of Missouri red granite, which is appropriate. Robert Barnes gave St. Louis a hospital, and you know, he did it for a real practical reason. His children both died young, and he felt like if health care or if the medicine had improved, they would have survived. And so he invested his entire estate and gave to 3 of his friends charge of the money and said, build the best hospital that money can buy. And, you know, they did a pretty good job. Barnes is an incredible institution, you know, I mean, highly renowned. So it was great that Robert did that, but it was out of his heart because both of their children died quite young. Barnes was an interesting guy. He went into banking and he started a grocery business, but he went into banking and was quite successful at all of that. And he had advanced money to Adolphus Bush, $50,000 to help him start that brewery that his father-in-law had. And Eberhard Anheuser handed it over to Bush, and then he said, you know, make it happen. Bush couldn't get anybody to lend him any money. Barnes said, hey, here's $50,000. Now, over the next 50 years, the Bush family and the Bush businesses gave the hospital way more than $50,000 in terms of support. So there's many great stories in Bellefontaine. It's just full of them. Everybody's got a story, and you'll find some new and different stories on our walking tour that's available now. And you can do that self-guided, or you can go online and find out when a guided tour will be available. And the self-guided tour, you can pick up a booklet right there at the entrance and make your way through the cemetery. And I hope you'll do that. Enjoy the beauty of the place, the history of the place, and the wonder that is Bellefontaine Cemetery. Thank you very much.
Well, if nothing else, I think we got the pronunciation worked out. I wish that were the only French name in our city that was mispronounced, but there are numerous others. Thank you, Richard. We really appreciated that. It was very well done. Excuse me one moment. Members of the welcome team will now take up a collection to support the society. If you are moved to make a donation today, we appreciate anything that you may be able to offer. Like all nonprofits, we rely on the generosity of our members and friends to ensure our community can keep providing our many free programs. If you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate, or just use the QR code on the screen now. Or even better, become a pledging member. If you are interested in joining the Ethical Society, our membership coordinator, Courtney Scott Camarata, will be available afterwards to answer your questions. We would love to keep you informed about our future events at the Ethical Society of St. Louis. If you'd like to join our weekly newsletter, sign up using the QR code on the screen above me. There's a lot going on. I hope you can find a way to get involved and connected to the community in ways that feel good for you. If you want more details on any of these events, you can check out the weekly newsletter, the Friends of the Ethical Society Facebook group, or email the relevant staff person or member. You may notice that the staff contact information is no longer on the program where you're used to seeing it. In response to member feedback, we are now using the space on the back of the program for information you might find more useful. However, all staff and board contact information can be readily accessed on our website from the home page by clicking the tab called Contact in the top right-hand corner. We have a few announcements today, four to be more precise. The first one is a very brief special membership meeting on October 29th at 9:45 in the Hankey Room, and your presence is requested. We plan to vote on the proposed bylaws change to Article 4, professional leadership, and we need a quorum of active members in order to hold the successful vote. The full proposed changes are available in the October Connection and are also on the back of today's program. So if you want to take a look at those, they have the full verbiage on there. A brief synopsis is that a change to the language will allow for the possibility that our future leaders and directors might not be certified by the American Ethical Union. This change is proposed to allow for more flexibility while the AU Leadership Certification Program is on an indefinite hiatus. Please plan to attend on October 29th to ensure that we are able to obtain required quorum of active members. The special meeting will be brief and immediately followed by the forum, How Are Humanists, Atheists, and Secularists and Freethinkers Regarded Abroad, presented by a guest speaker from the Belgian Humanist Association. If you have questions about the bylaws, please reach out to the board or via the board feedback form, which is on the website. Next announcement for October 15th and 22nd and 29th, this was applicable to all of them, we'll have our Thanksgiving service platform on Sunday, November 26th, and you can sign up for your preferred service responsibility now. Please check the weekly email blast for our RSVP link and sign yourself up. Additionally, we are collecting donations for the International Institute and the Atheist Alliance, Helping the Homeless. Those details are also in the weekly email, and we thank you in advance for your generosity. If you are willing to be a lead volunteer for one of the service opportunities, please connect with Krista White. Thank you. Join the Climate Action Now group and expert birder Brenda Henty on October 21st for a 2-hour birdwatching session, walking, viewing, and learning about some of our feathered friends. We will meet at 8 o'clock outside the Dennis and Judith Jones Visitors Center in Forest Park. Bring binoculars if you have them. If not, we will have several extras to share, and it will be canceled if it's raining. Excuse me while I look for my, there's a reason why this binder has 3 rings, and I abused it, apparently. So, I think we should introduce the third musical selection now. As context for this last musical selection, keep in mind that the artist, Warren Zevon, was diagnosed with mesothelioma in September of 2008. It's thought that he was exposed to asbestos as a boy when playing in the attic above his father's carpet store. This piece that you're about to hear was written shortly before he died in September of 2009 at age 56. Please welcome back to the stage Claire Minnis, who performed Warren Zevon's Keep Me in Your Heart.
I think as a young person, I lost some people who are close to me, and wondering, what's next or what's happening or what it means was difficult at that point in my life. And I think that when I found secular humanism, I felt a lot of comfort in the passing of those close to me, to know that I have the opportunity and the responsibility to carry their light with me for every chance that I get to interact with others. This is Keep Me in Your Heart. Shadows are falling.